The light turned red, but the truck didn't stop. I remember the horn. I remember the headlights growing too big, too fast. Then nothing, just white, then black, then a hospital ceiling swimming above my face when my eyes finally opened. Ethan? Ethan Cole, can you hear me? A nurse leaned over me. Her badge said Grace Turner. My chest hurt with every breath. My left arm was wrapped in something stiff and heavy. Where? My throat felt like sandpaper. Where am I? Northside General, Grace said. You were in a car accident last night. A truck ran a red light and hit your driver's side. You're lucky to be alive, Ethan. Lucky. That word didn't match the pain crawling up my ribs. Madison, I said. Is Madison here? My girlfriend. Does she know? Grace's face changed for half a second. Just half a second. It smoothed over again. Let me check with the front desk, Grace said, and left the room too quickly. I lay there staring at the ceiling tiles, counting them because counting was easier than thinking. My phone was on the side table, screen cracked, but still working. No missed calls from Madison. Not one. 5 years together, and not one call. I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe her phone died. Maybe she was stuck at work, still unaware her boyfriend had been crushed inside a car on Lakeshore Drive. A different nurse walked past my open door, talking to a coworker. I only caught pieces of it, but they were enough to knock the air out of me all over again. Yeah, the girlfriend came in around midnight, signed the discharge acknowledgement forms, then left before the doctor even finished the update. Wait, I said, my voice cracking. Please come back. The nurse stepped into the doorway, surprised I'd heard anything at all. You said my girlfriend was here? Madison Reyes? She was here last night. The nurse hesitated. She came in around midnight, yes. Spoke with the doctor briefly, signed some paperwork, and left. I assumed she'd be back this morning. She left. I repeated. Just left. I don't have more details than that. I'm sorry. The nurse walked away before I could ask anything else. Madison had seen me broken and wrapped in bandages, and Madison had walked out. I grabbed my phone with my good hand and called her. Straight to voicemail. Hey, it's Madison. Leave a message. I hung up before the beep and tried again. Voicemail. My hand was shaking now, not from the accident, but from something colder. Grace came back in, checking the monitor, and must have seen my face because her expression softened. Ethan, you should rest. Where's Madison? I cut in. Please, just tell me if you know anything. Grace glanced at the door, like she was deciding how much honesty I could survive. I saw her leave last night, Grace said quietly. Near the entrance. She wasn't alone. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, not alone? There was a man with her. I don't know who he was. I just noticed because they didn't look like two people leaving a hospital in a hurry, Ethan. They looked calm, almost like they were laughing about something. Laughing, I said, like the word itself was foreign. My girlfriend was laughing with some man while I was in surgery. I might be wrong, Grace said gently. I only saw it for a second. But Grace didn't sound like someone who thought she was wrong. I called Madison again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. 5 years of birthdays, apartments, arguments, and promises whispered in the dark. And all I had now was a cracked phone screen and a dial tone that never picked up. Madison, please. I said out loud to no one, to the empty hospital room, to the ceiling tiles I'd already counted twice. Just answer. Just tell me you're okay. Tell me this isn't what it looks like. The phone rang once more against my ear. Then the same voice, cheerful and recorded, filled the silence. Hey, it's Madison. Leave a message. I didn't leave one this time. I just let the phone slide from my fingers onto the blanket, and I stared at the door, waiting for someone, anyone, to walk through it and tell me I was wrong about all of it. No one came. Instead, another voice called from the hallway, low and urgent, cutting through the beeping machines. Room 214? That's my brother's room. Ethan Cole. Move, please. The door swung open and Nathan Cole stumbled in, hair a mess, jacket half-zipped, breathing like he'd run the whole way from the parking lot. Ethan. Nathan's voice cracked the second our eyes met. I got the call from Marcus at work. Not from you. Not from anyone here. What happened? I'm alive, I said. Barely feels like a win right now. Don't joke about that. Nathan pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down hard. I called Madison twice on my way here. She didn't pick up either. That name landed like a slap. You called her too? Of course I called her. She's your girlfriend, Ethan. I figured she'd already be here, holding your hand, yelling at doctors, whatever she does. Nathan studied my face, and whatever he saw there made him lean forward. What? What is it? She was here, I said quietly. Last night. She signed some papers and left. With someone. A man Grace saw her with. Nathan went very still. Say that again. You heard me. Ethan, that can't be right. Maybe it was a co-worker. Maybe it was. I've called her 11 times, Nathan. Straight to voicemail every single time. My voice shook, and I hated that it did. 5 years, and she couldn't even wait until I woke up. Nathan didn't argue after that. Nathan just sat there, jaw tight, staring at the cracked phone lying on the blanket like it was something dangerous. I'm going to find her, Nathan said finally. I'm going to find out exactly what happened last night. Don't, I said. Not yet. I need to hear it from her. Not from you, not from Grace, not from some nurse in the hallway. From Madison. Nathan didn't like that answer. I could see it in the way his hands curled into fists on his knees. But Nathan nodded anyway. I picked the phone back up. One more call. Voicemail. Madison. I whispered. Not for Nathan. Not for anyone listening. Just for the version of me that still believed there was an explanation. Please pick up. The line clicked over to the same recording, cheerful and untouched by anything that had happened to me in the last 12 hours. Hey, it's Madison. Leave a message. I let the phone drop onto the blanket again, and this time I didn't reach for it. Nathan hadn't left the chair beside my bed in over an hour. Every few minutes, Nathan checked his phone, then set it face down on his knee like it had personally offended him. Still nothing. I asked. Nothing. Nathan's jaw tightened. I called Dad too. He's on his way. That surprised me. You called Samuel? Madison didn't. Madison didn't call anyone, Ethan. Not me. Not Dad. I only found out because Marcus from your office heard it from the site foreman and texted me a screenshot of the accident report. Nathan finally looked up from his phone. You could have died last night, and your own girlfriend didn't think to tell your family. I didn't have an answer for that. I just stared at the 4-line taped to my arm, trying to understand how 5 years of birthdays and holidays and late-night promises could end with silence. The door opened, and Samuel Cole walked in, still wearing his work jacket, cap crumpled in one fist. My father's eyes found me first, checking for damage the way he used to check a job site for cracks in the foundation. Ethan. Samuel's voice was rough. Nathan said a truck hit you. I'm okay, Dad. Banged up, but okay. Samuel's shoulders dropped an inch, like he'd been holding his breath since Nathan's call. Then his eyes moved to Nathan, then back to me. Where's Madison? I figured she'd be glued to that chair. Nathan answered before I could. She's not here. She left last night, before Ethan even woke up. Samuel's face went hard in a way I rarely saw. Left? Left to where? We don't know, I said quietly. She's not answering. The door opened again, and Grace Turner stepped in with a chart, pausing when she saw the room had gotten crowded. I can come back. No, I said. Please, stay. I need to ask you something. Grace hesitated, glancing at Nathan and Samuel like she was measuring how much she should say in front of them. Grace, I said, you told me you saw Madison leaving with someone last night. I need to know more. Please. Grace set the chart down slowly. Ethan, I only saw it from the nurse's station window. I wasn't trying to. I know, I said. Just tell me what you saw. Grace took a breath. It was around 1 a.m. I was restocking supplies near the front desk when I noticed her walking out through the main entrance. There was a man with her, dark coat, expensive-looking watch, the kind of confidence that made him stand out even from a distance. Did you hear a name? Nathan asked, leaning forward. I did, actually, Grace said. The security guard at the door greeted him. Called him Mr. Hale. Derek Hale, I think. The name meant nothing to me, and that somehow made it worse. A stranger. Someone I'd never even heard of, standing close enough to my girlfriend that a security guard knew his name. Was she upset? I asked. Crying? Worried? Anything. Grace's silence answered before her words did. She was laughing. Grace said finally. He said something, and she laughed. It wasn't loud, but I remember it because it felt so out of place in a hospital at 1 a.m. I told myself maybe she was nervous, maybe it was stress, But it didn't look like stress, Ethan. It looked like two people who were comfortable with each other. The room went quiet except for the beeping monitor beside my bed. Ethan. Samuel's voice was low, careful. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that sounds okay. It doesn't sound okay, Nathan said. It sounds like she wasn't just leaving. It sounds like she left with someone she already knew. I felt something cold settle into my chest, colder than the accident, colder than the pain in my ribs. Madison hadn't panicked when I got hurt. Madison hadn't sat in some waiting room, chewing her nails, waiting for news. Madison had walked out laughing on the arm of a man named Betrayal, while machines kept my heart beating. Ethan, Grace said gently, I probably shouldn't have said anything. I just didn't want you finding out some other way, from a stranger or a bill in the mail with his name on it. No, I said. Thank you. I needed to hear it from someone who isn't afraid to tell me the truth. Grace gave a small nod and slipped out of the room, leaving the three of us in silence. Samuel sat on the edge of my bed, something he hadn't done since I was a teenager. 5 years, Ethan. 5 years, and she couldn't even make one phone call. Maybe there's an explanation, I said, even though the words felt hollow leaving my mouth. Ethan. Nathan's voice cracked with frustration. She left the hospital with another man's arm practically around her while you were unconscious. What explanation fixes that? I didn't answer because Nathan wasn't wrong, and some small, stubborn part of me was still trying to protect a version of Madison that clearly hadn't existed for a long time, if ever. Samuel reached over and gripped my good hand, the way he used to when I was a kid, scared of something in the dark. Whatever happens next, you're not doing this alone. Not like she left you. I nodded, throat too tight to speak. Nathan stood up and started pacing the small strip of floor between the bed and the window. Betrayal, Nathan said, like testing the shape of the name. I'm going to find out exactly who that is. Not yet. I said again, quieter this time. I don't want a name and a headline. I want to hear Madison say it herself. And if she never does, Nathan asked, if she just disappears and lets you piece it together from a nurse and a security guard? I didn't have an answer for that either. Outside the window, the city kept moving, cars and buses and strangers with no idea that my entire life had just cracked open in a hospital room, one sentence at a time. Madison wasn't scared for me. Madison was somewhere else, laughing with someone else, while I lay here trying to remember how to breathe through the pain in my chest that had nothing to do with the accident anymore. Madison walked in on the third day, wearing a coat I'd never seen before, one that looked like it cost more than my hospital bill. Ethan. Madison's voice was calm, almost businesslike. You look better than I expected. You could have called, I said. Any time in the last 3 days would have worked. Madison sat down in the chair Nathan had claimed for 2 nights straight. Crossing her legs like this was a meeting, not a hospital room. I knew you were stable. Grace told me. Grace didn't tell you anything, I said. You never called her either. Madison's jaw tightened just slightly. I came here to talk, Ethan. Can we do that without you keeping score? Keeping score. I almost laughed, except nothing about this felt funny. You left me unconscious in an ICU bed and walked out with another man. I'm not keeping score, Madison. I'm just trying to understand. For the first time since walking in, Madison looked at me directly. His name is Betrayal. I know his name, I said. A nurse saw you leaving with him. Laughing. Madison didn't flinch. I met Derek 4 months ago at a gala for one of his real estate developments. I wasn't looking for anything, Ethan. It just happened. For months, I repeated. You've been seeing him for 4 months. Not seeing him, not exactly. Talking. Getting to know him. Madison's voice stayed even, rehearsed, like she'd practiced this speech in the car. And then the accident happened, and I panicked, and I called him because I needed someone to be there, and he came. I was the one in the accident, Madison. I needed someone there too. You had Nathan. You had your dad. Madison said it like that settled something. I knew you'd be taken care of. I stared at her, waiting for some flicker of the person I thought I knew for 5 years. It didn't come. Why are you here, Madison? Really? Madison took a breath, and for a second, I thought maybe an apology was coming. Instead, she said, I'm here because I don't want to drag this out. I think we both know this relationship ran its course a long time ago. It's course. My chest tightened around the words. 5 years, and you're calling it a course that ran out. Ethan, be honest with yourself. Madison's voice sharpened. Or are we building? You designing buildings you'll never get credit for at a firm that doesn't respect you. Me, waiting around for a promotion that isn't coming in an apartment we can barely afford. That's not a life, Ethan. That's survival. That's called working towards something, Madison. That's called patience. Derek doesn't ask me to be patient. Madison's eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. Derek has money, real money. Connections. He took me to Miami last month for a weekend because he felt like it. He talks about the future like it's already decided, already good. You talk about the future like it's something we might survive if we're careful enough. The words landed exactly where she meant them to. So that's it, I said quietly. I wasn't enough because I wasn't rich enough. It's not just about money, Madison said, though her tone told me it mostly was. It's about what kind of life I actually want. Your dreams are small, Ethan. Safe. Comfortable, maybe, but small. I want more than small. Something in my chest cracked clean in half, quieter than the accident, but somehow worse. You could have told me that a long time ago, I said. Instead of staying 5 years for a life you thought was too small for you. Madison stood, smoothing the coat she didn't need in a heated hospital room. I didn't come here to fight, Ethan. I came here to end things cleanly while you're still healing. I think that's fair. Fair, I echoed. None of this has been fair, Madison. Madison paused at the door, and for 1 second, I thought maybe something would break through, some flicker of guilt or grief for 5 years reduced to a business transaction. Take care of yourself, Ethan, Madison said instead, and walked out without looking back, the door clicking shut behind her like a period at the end of a sentence I never got to finish. I lay there staring at that door for a long time, waiting for it to open again. It didn't. 5 years. Every late night helping her rehearse for job interviews. Every dollar stretched thin so she could buy the right outfit for a networking event. Every dream I quietly folded smaller so hers could take up more space. All of it, apparently, just a placeholder for someone better, someone richer, someone who called my life small. The monitor beside me beeped steadily, indifferent to the fact that everything I thought I understood about my own life had just walked out in a coat I didn't recognize. The door opened again sometime later, softer this time. Samuel stepped in, taking one look at my face before saying a word. She came, Samuel said. It wasn't a question. She came to end it, I said. Cleanly, she said. Like breaking up in a hospital room counts as clean. Samuel pulled the chair closer and sat down slowly, the way he did when he wanted to choose his words carefully. I'm not going to tell you it doesn't hurt, Ethan. It's supposed to hurt. Pain like that doesn't skip anybody. Then what am I supposed to do with it? You've got 2 choices, Samuel said. You let it bury you, or you let it rebuild you. I've seen men do both. The ones who got buried, they stopped believing they were worth more than what someone else decided about them. And the ones who got rebuilt? Samuel's eyes held mine, steady the way they always were on a job site, checking for cracks, deciding what could still be saved. The ones who got rebuilt, Samuel said, they used the pain like a foundation instead of a grave. Your choice, Ethan. Nobody else's. I didn't answer, but for the first time since Madison walked out that door, something other than grief stirred quietly in my chest. Physical therapy started on my second week home, in a small clinic 3 blocks from my apartment. My legs shook the first time I stood without holding the parallel bars, and the therapist called it progress. It didn't feel like progress. It felt like proof of how much the accident had taken. You're rebuilding muscle memory, Grace said one evening, stopping by after her shift out of habit more than duty. Body remembers how to walk. It just needs to trust itself again. Feels like more than my body forgot how to trust itself, I said. Grace sat across from me at my kitchen table, still in scrubs. You mean Madison? I mean everything. I turned the coffee mug in my hands, not drinking it. 5 years, Grace. I keep running the numbers like maybe I miscounted somewhere. Like maybe it wasn't really 5 years I spent making myself smaller for her. You didn't miscount, Grace said. I only knew you a few days, and even I could see you talking yourself out of things you wanted. You'd start a sentence about your work, then stop halfway and change the subject. Habit, I admitted. Madison didn't like hearing about work that wasn't hers. That's not a habit, Ethan. That's erosion. Little pieces of you worn down over years until there's barely a shape left. I didn't answer because Grace wasn't wrong, and hearing it out loud stung more than I expected. Nathan showed up most weekends, dragging me out for walks longer than my legs wanted, insisting movement mattered more than mood. One Saturday, sitting on a bench near the river, Nathan brought up something I hadn't thought about in years. "Remember your senior project?" Nathan asked. "That bridge design you built out of balsa wood and pure stubbornness? That was a long time ago. You cried when you won that competition," Nathan said, grinning. "Actual tears, Ethan. I've never seen you care about anything the way you cared about that design." "I stopped designing things like that when I met Madison," I said. "She thought ambitious projects were a waste of time if they didn't pay well right away. So you just stopped." Nathan's voice hardened slightly. "You had something that made you cry from happiness, and you buried it because someone else didn't approve. It wasn't that simple, Nathan. Wasn't it?" Nathan turned to face me on the bench. "Every time you brought up switching firms or pitching your own designs, she had a reason it was too risky, too soon, too impractical. I watched it happen for years and told myself it wasn't my place to say anything." "Why didn't you?" "Because you looked happy enough on the surface," Nathan said. "And I figured if you weren't complaining, maybe you'd made peace with it. I didn't realize you were just quiet about all the pieces you were giving up. I didn't have a defense for that, so I let the silence sit between us instead, the river moving slow and gray under a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain." A week later, my phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in years. Olivia Bennett's name lit up the screen, and for a second, I just stared at it, surprised my old college friend still had it saved. "Olivia," I answered. "It's been what, 6 years?" "7, actually," Olivia said. "I heard about the accident through the design community grapevine. Are you okay?" "Healing," I said, slowly. "Good, because I need to steal some of your time, if you're up for it." "Coffee." We met 2 days later at a cafe downtown. Olivia looked exactly like I remembered, sharper, maybe more confident, the kind of person who walked into rooms already halfway through a plan. "I run design now at Hartwell and Bennett," Olivia said, sliding a folder across the table. "We're breaking ground on a mixed-use tower next year, and I need someone who understands vision, not just code compliance." "I'm flattered, but I haven't designed anything ambitious in years," I said. "I mostly handle revisions at my firm. Small stuff." Olivia tilted her head. "That's strange, because I still have your senior thesis saved on an old hard drive. That cantilever concept you built? I use it as an example in guest lectures. Half my junior designers think it's still cutting edge." I stared at her, genuinely stunned. "You kept that." "I kept it because it was brilliant, Ethan. What happened to the person who designed it?" The question sat heavier than I expected. Life happened. Priorities shifted. "Whose priorities?" Olivia asked, and the question landed exactly where it needed to. I didn't answer right away, but something in my chest shifted like a door creaking open after years of staying shut. "The project," Olivia said, sliding the folder closer, "needs someone who isn't afraid of big ideas. I want you on my team, Ethan. Not as a favor, because I think you're exactly the kind of designer this project needs." "Why now?" I asked. "Why me?" "Because talent like yours doesn't just disappear," Olivia said. "It just gets buried under other people's comfort zones. I'm asking you to dig it back up. And if I say I'm not ready, if the accident and everything after it has me a little more cautious than the guy who built that cantilever, then I'd say you're allowed a few weeks to be cautious," Olivia said, "but not a career. I didn't fly across town for coffee to hire someone who's decided small is safer. I came because I remember what you're capable of when nobody's telling you to shrink." I opened the folder, looked at the renderings, the ambition practically radiating off the page, and felt something I hadn't felt in longer than I wanted to admit. Purpose. Not grief. Not humiliation. Just a small, steady spark of wanting something for myself again. "I'll do it," I said. "On one condition. I want creative input from day one, not just execution." Olivia smiled like she'd expected exactly that answer. That's the Ethan Cole I remember. Walking home that evening, Phone in my pocket with Olivia's contact saved under a project I actually wanted to build. I thought about everything Madison called small. My dreams, my ambition, my worth, apparently, measured against someone else's bank account. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, traffic humming past, and made myself a quiet promise, the kind nobody else needed to hear to make it real. I was done shrinking myself to fit inside someone else's idea of enough. Whatever came next, whoever came next, I wasn't folding myself smaller again. Not for comfort, not for love, not for anyone. 6 months after the accident, I stood in a conference room at Hartwell and Bennett, watching Olivia pin my tower design to the front wall like a trophy. The judges announced it this morning. Olivia said, barely containing her grin. Cole's design wins the citywide competition. Unanimous vote. Ethan. The room broke into applause, and for a second, I just stood there, letting it sink in. 6 months ago, I was calling a voicemail that never picked up. Now, people were clapping for something I'd built with my own hands and my own vision. Nobody else's approval required. Feels different, doesn't it? Nathan said later that night, over dinner to celebrate. Building something for yourself instead of shrinking to fit someone else's plans. Feels like the first thing I've been proud of in years, I admitted. You should call Dad, Nathan said. He's been asking about the competition every week since you told him you entered. I already left him a voicemail, I said. He called back within 2 minutes, just to yell, "That's my son," into the phone before hanging up. Nathan laughed, the sound easy and familiar. That sounds exactly like him. Grace texted too, I said. Said she always knew the guy counting ceiling tiles in hospital bed had more in him than he let on. She's not wrong. Nathan studied me for a second. You look lighter than I've seen you in years, Ethan. Even before the accident. I feel lighter, I said. Like I finally stopped carrying something that was never mine to carry. My phone buzzed halfway through dessert. An unfamiliar number, a Chicago area code. I almost let it go to voicemail out of habit, then answered anyway. Ethan Cole, this is Rachel Kim. I'm a financial journalist with the Tribune. I got your number from Olivia Bennett. She mentioned you might have some insight into Derek Hale. The name hit like a splash of cold water, even 6 months removed from the worst night of my life. I don't know Derek Hale personally, I said carefully. Why are you asking me? I'm investigating his real estate firm, Rachel said. Several investors have reported funds missing from a development project downtown. Your name came up because I understand your ex-girlfriend is currently involved with him. Madison, I said quietly. I'm not asking you to talk about your personal history, Rachel said. I'm asking if you've heard anything, seen anything that might connect to his business dealings. I haven't spoken to either of them in months, I said. I don't know anything about his business. Understood. If anything changes, here's my number. Rachel gave me her contact information before hanging up, and I sat there staring at my phone, Nathan watching me with a raised eyebrow. What was that about? Nathan asked. Apparently Derek Hale might be in trouble, I said. Investors are saying money is missing. Nathan sat back, arms crossed. Karma works fast when it wants to. I didn't respond right away, still turning the information over. Some old part of me wanted to feel satisfaction. A bigger part of me just felt tired, like the whole situation belonged to a life I'd already closed the door on. What I learned later, piecing it together from Rachel's reporting and a mutual friend who still talked to Madison occasionally, painted a picture I hadn't expected. Madison had moved into Derek's mansion 3 months after leaving me, trading a cramped 2-bedroom apartment for marble floors and a view of the lake. For a while, according to the friend, Madison seemed happy, posting photos from galas and weekend trips, exactly the life she said she wanted. But cracks had started showing before Rachel Kim ever made a single call. Derek's moods had shifted, the friend said. Meetings canceled without explanation. Phone calls taken behind closed doors, voice dropping to a hush whenever Madison walked into the room. Madison had mentioned it once, offhand, laughing it off as just business stress, but the friend said the laugh hadn't reached her eyes even then. One night, over dinner in that same mansion, Madison finally pushed back. You've canceled 3 dinners this month, Derek, Madison said, according to what the friend later described. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Business is complicated right now, Derek said. Nothing you need to worry about. I live here too, Madison said. If something's wrong with the business, it affects me. It doesn't, Derek said, sharper than usual. Drop it, Madison. I left everything for this, Madison said. The least you can do is talk to me. You left a 2-bedroom apartment and a guy who couldn't afford a decent vacation, Derek said. Let's not pretend you sacrificed much. Madison had gone quiet at that. According to the friend, the kind of quiet that comes from realizing an insult landed exactly where it was aimed. Derek had set down his fork, according to the account, and looked at Madison with something colder than irritation. I didn't ask you to leave everything, Madison. That was your choice. The words apparently landed the same way Madison's own words had landed on me in that hospital room. And for a moment, hearing it secondhand, I almost felt something close to sympathy. Almost. Sitting across from Nathan at dinner, phone still warm from Rachel Kim's call, I thought about how quickly comfortable lives could show hairline fractures nobody saw coming. Madison had called my dream small, my life safe, my future uncertain. Now the man she'd traded me for was hiding phone calls and snapping at dinner tables. And the marble floors and lake views apparently weren't enough to cover the cracks underneath. You think she regrets it? Nathan asked. Leaving, I mean. I don't know, I said. And that's the strange part. 6 months ago, I would have given anything to hear she regretted it. Tonight, I realized I don't actually care anymore. You okay? Nathan asked, studying my face. I'm okay, I said, and meant it, maybe for the first time since the accident. I've got a design going into construction next spring. I've got people who actually show up when things get hard. Whatever's happening in that mansion, it's not my problem anymore. Nathan raised his glass slightly. To not shrinking, I echoed, and for the first time in a long time, the toast felt like it belonged to a life I was actually building, not one I was just surviving. Rachel Kim's expose went live on a Tuesday morning, and by lunchtime, it was the only thing anyone in the office could talk about. Derek Hale ran a fraudulent investment scheme for nearly 3 years. Olivia read aloud from her phone, standing in the break room. Investors lost an estimated $11 million. Assets frozen. Arrest warrant issued this morning. I stood there, coffee halfway to my mouth, try to process it. He's actually being arrested? I asked. Front page, Olivia said, turning her phone toward me. There was Derek's photo, the same confident face Grace had described from a hospital window over a year ago, now paired with a headline that read like a verdict. How long has Rachel been working on this? I asked. Almost a year from what the article says, Olivia said. She found a paper trail of shell companies, fake return statements, investors who never actually got the properties they paid into. Derek was moving new investor money around just to cover the last round of losses. That's not a business, I said. That's just theft with better marketing. Apparently, a lot of very wealthy, very confident people believed the marketing, Olivia said, setting her phone down. You okay? This is the guy Madison left you for, right? That's him, I said. My phone buzzed a few minutes later. Nathan. Turn on the news, Nathan said the second I answered. Derek Hale's whole operation just collapsed. They're saying Madison's name too, linking her to the lifestyle he funded with stolen money. Madison isn't the one who committed fraud, I said. Doesn't matter to reporters, Nathan said. She's photographed at every gala, every event, wearing jewelry investors probably paid for without knowing it. The article calls her the face of Hale's excess. I sat down slowly, absorbing that. Whatever anger I still carried toward Madison. Watching her name drag through a scandal she may not have fully understood didn't feel like justice. It felt like watching a building collapse on someone standing too close to it. By evening, the story had exploded across every local outlet. Derek's assets were frozen, including the mansion Madison had been living in for over a year. Reports said Madison had been photographed leaving the property with only 2 suitcases, cameras flashing the entire way to a car that wasn't even hers. My phone rang again, an unknown number. I almost let it go, the way I had with Rachel Kim's first call. Something made me answer. Ethan. Madison's voice was barely recognizable, thin and shaking. Ethan, please don't hang up. I sat in silence for a moment, stunned. Madison. I don't know who else to call. Madison said, words tumbling out fast. Everyone I know is either avoiding me or selling stories about me to reporters. My accounts are frozen. I don't have anywhere to go tonight. Part of me wanted to hang up right there. Another part of me, the part Samuel had spent months helping me rebuild instead of bury, made me stay on the line. What do you need, Madison? I don't know, Madison admitted, voice cracking. I just needed to hear someone who isn't a reporter or a lawyer. I know I don't deserve to ask you for anything. You're right, I said quietly. You don't. Silence stretched between us, heavy with everything neither of us said out loud. I have a hearing tomorrow, Madison finally said. Just as a witness, they said, not a suspect. But the reporters are already calling me a suspect anyway. I'm scared, Ethan. I didn't know Madison comfort. I didn't know Madison anything. But some quiet, stubborn part of me needed to see this ending with my own eyes, not through headlines or secondhand account from a mutual friend. I'll be at the courthouse tomorrow, I said. Not for you. For myself. Madison didn't ask what that meant. Maybe some part of her understood. The next morning, I stood across the street from the courthouse, watching a crowd of reporters swarm the entrance. Cameras clicked in rapid bursts the second a black car pulled up and Madison stepped out. She looked nothing like the woman who'd walked into my hospital room in an expensive coat, calling my dreams small. Madison's hair was pulled back hastily, no makeup, wearing clothes that looked borrowed rather than chosen. Reporters shouted questions, shoving microphones toward her face, and for the first time since I'd known her, Madison looked completely, utterly lost. Our eyes met across the crowd for just a second. Madison broke away from the reporters and crossed the street toward me, ignoring the flashes still going off behind her. Ethan, Madison said, voice small. Thank you for coming. I almost didn't, I said honestly. I know I don't deserve any of this concern, Madison said. I know that better than anyone right now. I studied her face, searching for the confidence that once called my ambitions small and safe. It wasn't there anymore. Just fear, raw and unguarded, staring back at me. I'm not here to save you, Madison, I said. I'm not here to gloat either. Then why? Because I needed to see it for myself, I said. I needed to know I could stand here and feel nothing but calm. No anger, no satisfaction, just calm. Madison's eyes filled with tears. She seemed to be fighting hard to hold back. I made a mistake, Ethan. A huge one. You did, I agreed. But that's yours to carry now, not mine. A reporter shouted Madison's name from across the street, and Madison flinched, glancing back toward the chaos waiting for her. I should go, Madison said. They're going to ask why I was talking to you. Let them ask, I said. You don't owe me an explanation, and I don't owe you comfort. But I hope, whatever happens after today, you actually find whatever it was you were looking for when you walked out of that hospital room. Madison's face crumpled slightly, the closest thing to real emotion I'd seen from her since the breakup. I hope you find what you were really looking for, I said again, quieter this time, and meant every word of it, even the part of me that once wanted her to suffer exactly like this. Madison didn't answer. Madison just nodded, wiped her eyes quickly, and walked back toward the courthouse steps, back into the flashing cameras and shouted questions, alone in a way I remembered too well from a hospital bed over a year ago. I turned and walked in the opposite direction, and for the first time since the accident, I didn't look back to see if she was watching me leave. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was scheduled for 10 in the morning, but I arrived an hour early just to stand across the street and look up at it alone first. The tower stretched 32 stories into the Chicago skyline, glass and steel catching the early sunlight in a way I'd only ever seen on renderings until now. My name was listed as lead designer on the plaque near the entrance. Not Olivia's firm's name first. Mine right there beside it, exactly the way I'd asked for a year and a half ago in that cafe. You're going to wear a hole in the sidewalk, Nathan said, walking up beside me with 2 coffees, handing one over. It's not going anywhere, Ethan. You built it. It's staying put. I keep waiting to wake up, I admitted. Feels too big to be real. It's real, Nathan said. Believe it. Samuel arrived a few minutes later, wearing a suit instead of his usual work jacket, looking almost uncomfortable in it. Your mother would have loved this, Samuel said quietly, looking up at the building. She always said you had an eye for things other people couldn't picture yet. I wish she could see it, I said. She sees it, Samuel said, and left it at that. Grace showed up next, still in scrubs, having clearly rushed straight from shift at the hospital. I've got 20 minutes before I need to head back, Grace said, slightly out of breath. I wasn't missing this for anything. You didn't have to come, I said. I watched you count ceiling tiles in a hospital bed because counting was easier than thinking about everything falling apart, Grace said. I wasn't missing the day you stood in front of proof that it didn't actually fall apart. It rebuilt into something better. Olivia arrived last, clipboard in hand, already directing the event crew with the same sharp confidence she'd walked into that cafe with over a year ago. Ready? Olivia asked, stopping beside me. As I'll ever be, I said. You should be more than ready, Olivia said. You should be proud. This building is the boldest thing this firm has put up in a decade, and it's because you refuse to make it smaller than your original vision. You could have hired someone with less baggage, I said. Someone who wasn't rebuilding a career and a life at the same time. I didn't want someone without baggage, Olivia said. I wanted someone who knew exactly what it cost to build something honest. That's rarer than talent, Ethan. The ceremony started on time. A small stage had been set up near the entrance. City officials and investors gathered. Cameras from local news outlets angled toward the ribbon stretched across the doors. Olivia gave a short speech about vision and partnership, then turned the microphone over to me. I hadn't prepared much to say. Standing there, looking out at Nathan, Samuel, and Grace in the crowd, I found the words came easier than I expected. A little over a year ago, I was lying in a hospital bed, certain my life had just fallen apart. I said, someone I loved called my dream small, said I'd never build anything worth being proud of. I paused, letting that settle. This building is 32 stories of proof that she was wrong. The crowd applauded, and I caught Samuel wiping his eyes discreetly, pretending it was the wind. After the ribbon was cut and the crowd began moving toward the entrance for tours, I stepped back for a moment, just taking in the scene. That's when I saw her. Madison stood across the street, half hidden behind a group of onlookers who'd stopped to watch the ceremony out of curiosity rather than invitation. She looked thinner than I remembered, dressed plainly, nothing like the woman who once walked into hospital rooms in coats that cost more than my monthly rent. Our eyes met for just a moment. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel the urge to walk over and say something clever, something that might finally balance the scales between us. I didn't feel much of anything toward Madison at all, and that absence felt more like victory than any words could have. Madison didn't approach. Maybe she understood there was nothing left to say. Maybe she simply stood there, watching a life unfold that she'd once called small, now towering 32 stories above the street she was standing on, unnoticed by everyone around her. I didn't need revenge. Watching Madison stand outside a crowd she wasn't part of, no cameras seeking her out, no one recognizing her name for anything except the scandal she'd been swept into, told me everything revenge might have tried to say anyway. Nathan appeared at my side, following my gaze across the street. Is that? Yeah, I said. Nathan studied Madison for a moment, then looked back at me. You good? I'm good, I said, a minute completely. Better than good, actually. Good, Nathan said, because you earned every bit of this. I watched you count ceiling tiles too, remember. I watched everything after that. Let's go inside. I want to show you the view from the top floor. We walked into the building together, Samuel's hand briefly resting on my shoulder, Grace already texting the nurse's station about the view from the observation deck, Olivia discussing the next project before we'd even finished celebrating this one. Standing at the top floor windows minutes later, looking out over a city that once watched me lying broken in a hospital bed, I thought about that night on Lakeshore Drive, the truck, the headlights, the silence that followed when Madison never called. That night had felt like the ending of everything. It took me over a year to understand it had actually been the beginning. The accident hadn't broken my life. It had broken the life I was forcing myself to fit into, one quiet sacrifice at a time. What grew back afterward, slowly, painfully, honestly, was actually mine. For the first time since I could remember, I wasn't shrinking to fit anyone else's idea of who I should be. I was exactly who I was always meant to become.